Well, listen again. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. I always consider this a pleasure. I just have a few things that are very heavy on my mind here at this moment as far as Barbados is concerned. But I want to just jump right into what I want to say, and I want to use this platform here tonight to say this. Um, just as much as the church was instrumental in meeting with the government during COVID. Okay, we have the meeting with the BEA, the BXC, and the Muslim Association. What I want to say is this: the time has come for the Bishop of Barbados and all of the major uh, evangelical organizations in Barbados and all of the bishops here in our island, all of the mainstream ministers. It's time for them to meet and to have a draft document prepared, sent to the president and to the Prime Minister of Barbados, asking for the immediate resignation of the current Attorney General, Mr. Dale Marshall. Okay, let me say that it is unrighteous during the campaign for you to say that Mr. Adriel Brathwaite, who in a year had 19 homicides to deal with, 365 days, he had 19 to deal with, and his statement was he does not know what he's doing, he needs to resign. You cannot be allowed to continue as the Attorney General when you are up to 28 homicides in half of a year. It is unrighteous for you to demand that a person with 19, they resign in a whole year, and in half of a year, you have 28. And the types of murders that we are seeing, I mean, the fact that you can't even attain, a viewing, that even at a viewing, the idea of killing someone is in the minds of somebody else. It's outrageous. So I am calling, okay, we make it abundantly clear, I am calling for the Bishop of Barbados and the bishops of the leading organizations, Christian organizations, as well as the Barbados Evangelical Association, the Barbados Christian Council, and the Muslim Association of Barbados, for there to be a meeting and a document drafted to the President and the Prime Minister of Barbados asking for the immediate resignation of the current Attorney General, and for someone who is capable and competent enough to help deal with this situation to be appointed to that position, because it is obvious that he does not have the answers, does not have solutions. And ladies and gentlemen, we must start at some place that's going to help to stem the flow of what is going on in Barbados. The other element that I want to look into is for us to understand that our nation since 2018 has literally gone down the drain. And we have to do the work now of rebuilding Barbados. And we have to rebuild Barbados pretty much from our young people. And I want to say this on the flip to what happened recently. Do you know that my godson was a part of an event for primary schools at the UE recently, and he came home. His mom contacted me. He came home with a book from that event they had at UE, and that book was actually in what they did there. They were teaching him about sex. Okay, now, and they had in this book Mrs. Weeks, they have in this book diagrams of puberty. They have diagrams telling the child what should happen. I mean, even young girls were there, and they're very explicit about,
Well, how old is it? How
erection.
old is this child? How old is this child?
11.
Wow.
Okay, they're explaining what happens, at stages with young ladies about erections and ejaculations, and you may wake up and this. Listen, I was so angry that our children are being exposed to all types of stuff in this nation under the scheme of education. And what you're seeing, I mean, we're talking about kids that should know their 12 times table, that don't even know it. Kids that are now developing. You want to have them, you want to bring them away from home. You're not telling the parents what they're going to be exposed to. And by the time the child comes home, they're telling you what they were told at these sessions. Something has to be done with our educational system in Barbados. It has gone too doggone demonic. Okay? And I think a lot of our educational system has overstepped its boundaries as far as what they think they have the right to teach our children. And they're not teaching our children about the Bible. They're not teaching our children about God. They're not teaching our children about Jesus. They're not teaching our kids about the Holy Spirit. They're not teaching our children anything beneficial spiritually, because they've blocked that out of the schools. They've blocked that out of their educational system. But for a child to leave home and then coming back home and they're able to tell you what they were told and show you on the page what they were told in a session at the University of the West Indies, listen, something has to be done here, because this is a serious breach of protocol. These folk are overstepping their boundaries, where they believe that it's their right to teach people's children what they want to teach them and not what they should be taught. I think that there are certain things that should be left up to the parents when the time is right for a child to be told or to know what is going on. I know there's great changes in society right now, but I do not believe that children should be suckered into an event and held at ransom by teachers and individuals who know what they're planning to say to these children while they're away from their parents or at these events or at these camps. I think something must be done right now to protect our children. We've already lost between 3 to 4 generations, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of work that has to be done to regain the minds of our children to some level of stable mentality right now. Now, I just shared this with another minister, and I was talking about the reality of what is going on in the community, as well as what's going on in the schools. Now, I see a lot of the kids on a daily basis, in the Spikestown area, and I'm telling you, a lot of the children right now are not about school, okay? Because a lot of the community level, and I know this for a fact, and interacting with many of them, and they will tell you going to school isn't life. At least that's one of the statements that was made to me. Going to school isn't life. And when you have a child who is of that kind of consciousness, that going to school isn't life, that mindset says going here on a daily basis is going to keep me back. And it's a reality that a lot of what you end up getting from school on many levels does not equate into actually living a good life. And if you have a community that is fueling that, you have a community where the child is, already involved in gambling, already involved in drugs, already involved in gangs, already involved in, different areas of life. They're not going to the school with the idea that I'm going to learn. School has just become a hideout spot because my friends are there. But what is critical right now, Mrs. Week, for the nation to do, we have to start this at our educational level. And I think it is also important for church leaders in Barbados to restructure this and have some level of dialogue with the Minister of Education about what is being taught in our schools, what is being given to our primary school children. And listen, this was an event at the UE with primary school children. And this is serious and it is deadly for them.
So, what did they invite them to do at UE? What was it? What was the invitation given?
From what my understanding is that there was, this event, this educational event that was, put on by some aspect of the University of the West Indies for, primary school children. Okay. And so a few weeks ago, and I tell you, when you hear a child come home and tell you, we learn, you thinking as a parent that they've gone to the, really you're going to the University of the West Indies, they're going to have, a child is going to come home and tell you, guess what we learned about today? I learned about sex today. At 11? No, that was a lie. This is the kind of stuff that we have to stop, because somebody needs to be held accountable for this level of activity. You cannot do that to parents. You cannot take children away from their homes, bring them into an environment, and then you bring this level of education to them without the consent of the parent. This is wrong, and it's happening in Barbados. And this is why it has become so difficult for us to get control of our kids, because somebody out there in the educational system, they have an agenda that is not healthy, it is not wholesome for our young people, and it's damaging and destroying our young people.
Yeah. I think sometimes
a lot we have to do something.
No, go ahead, Apostle. Go ahead, Apostle.
Yeah, I was saying, we have to do something about it now before we lose another 2 or 3 generations. That's what I wanted to end by saying.
Yes. And I can understand if you're in what we used to call it personal development program at my school, or if you're in biology class when they are that level at and they learn biology at secondary school, and they're teaching them about the female body and so on, and have to label and so on. But to invite the children at this is something special at the university, and didn't tell the parents, that can be, as a parent, some information is when you give children information. And I think that when it's done, right? When it's done, it's very important when it's done.
Yeah.
And that the parents are aware, and it's not, and the thing is, why a lot of parents will be upset, it has to do with what was done before. As you and I know, when the test was administered to the children, yes, or survey. And so parents want to know, and at that level, at the primary school level, really and truly, you should, that's why they teach, they teach biology at secondary school, right? So
listen, I'll tell you, Miss. I went to secondary school and we did biology, and I don't ever recall biology at secondary school being about sex. We dealt with the working of the heart.
Oh.
We dealt with the respiratory system.
Oh, I understand you now, what you're saying. So you're saying that they were showing them how intercourse happens.
Correct.
Oh my.
I did biology at
Oh,
school. Man, I still study the human body up to this day because I believe it's an amazing work of art. But
oh,
I'll do my best to get my hand on that book and share it with you so that you'll see for yourself what what they had
oh
and what they
no.
did.
That's too early. No, because they are so, I mean, they're seeing so much on, oh my Lord. I know I would be livid as a parent. Yeah. So
Okay.
I see
I
different. What
just
you're saying is not about body parts. It's about, and I've seen some of those books in the U.S. schools, in American schools. I've seen some of those books where they're
mhm.
teaching them, different ways to have sex, and all of these things. And I mean, at a primary school level, I think that's too much. I
No,
personally think that's too
no.
much as a parent.
Somebody needs to somebody needs to be held accountable for that type of activity. And I'm saying, I know, I mean, yeah, we understand we did areas about that, but we didn't have that level of, very intimate and very, deep information about, you know, sex and intimacy and what it means if you wake up in the morning and you have an erection. No, 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 no.
It's too
We
early.
didn't have these
It's
folk.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
these folk are running somebody else's agenda, and it's a part of what is interfering, and this is why you're gonna end up you giving this kind of information. This is where you're gonna end up having issues with children at
Yes.
school, even at the primary level. Okay, I remember years ago I had a meeting at the Ministry of Education when Mr. Ronald Jones was there, and we were talking about the deviant behavior of the children at the time, and I shared some things with him. And now I was sitting next to one of the educational officers there, and the issue came up about problems that they're having in schools. And one of the conversations I had with her was the fact that um, in a certain particular school here in Barbados, there was a teacher that was putting a little boy and a little girl together, and they were caught doing it.
What do
Okay,
you mean? What do you
and
mean? What do you
what
mean
I
put them
mean
together?
is attempting, okay, attempting to have them get close to each other.
Wow, the
So
teachers were
I
doing
just want
it.
to, I just want, yeah, okay. And then
Ah,
she told me, she said to me, she said to me, one case they were the little boy, um, they caught the little boy with, um, they caught a little boy asking a little girl if she knows that you can eat a candle. She said they asked him, that's what the teacher said. He was asking the little girl if he knows a candle, you can eat a candle. And um, the little girl asked him, what do you mean eat a candle? And he was about to show her what eating a candle meant. And when he was caught and they asked him where he got that from, he said this is what his mother's boyfriend said to come and eat the candle for him. Okay, so listen, we got we got some serious issues going on, and if we keep fueling an
mm,
already pre-existing problem, it's going to spiral out of control. So if you're gonna do this to children, and I want to say again, without parental consent, then somebody must be held accountable. I'm not going to share a lot of the things that I've been told and you know and situations, but I will share this particular one that I was called by a teacher. I was called by a teacher, um, and they told me, Apostle, we need you to pray. I need you to pray for this particular school. And I asked him what's going on. This teacher told me um, that she came back from lunch and found a teacher. This was on the day of the African awareness. Okay. And she came back and she came into the room from the opposite side, not the the normal entrance. She came back from lunch, she came into the opposite side. And she said she caught a teacher on this particular day during the African Awareness Day, teaching the children to call on an ancient African spirit. See, and she said when she just came into the room and asked her what she was doing, she kind of shut everything down. Listen, our children.
You mean at school?
Our children.
So a teacher told you about another teacher?
Yeah, she caught this particular teacher teaching the children how to invoke this ancient African spirit. It was a big issue, and she called me right away and asked for prayer. Listen, look, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in this nation that needs to be addressed, Madam Weeks, and people need to be held accountable. These things must stop being swept under the carpet. Listen, the church in Barbados should have exploded when they had that IDB test. But there's so many things that are happening in this country, and then 1 or 2 weeks is this big, huge media cry, and then after 2 weeks it dissipates. No, there are things that people need to be held accountable for when we find out that they're going on in Barbados. And this is very, very serious, madam. We very, very serious. And
no, you're right.
These
you're
things.
Right.
I have a lot of people wondering, why Apostle Scantlebury is like this. I have people that they confide in me. They tell me things that are going on, and I said, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" And yeah, this is stuff that's going on. There's big issues between what's going on in terms of Christianity in schools versus what is now being allowed into the schools as norm. And I think that the time for the church to really stand up and take her place and stop being partisan. The issue here is the salvation of our children. We've got to do what's necessary to make sure we can curb this attempt of the enemy to destabilize our children and to turn them away from strong, wholesome belief in God and faith in God, and helping them to understand that you're young. The Bible reminds that you're supposed to remember the Creator in the days of your youth and get our children back. This is what I told Minister Jones when I was in that meeting. I told him that this was one of my suggestions. I said, you can't just accept everyone as a teacher into a school. You have to also know what their religious persuasion is. Yeah, I was making a point about a meeting that I had with Mr. Jones while he was the Minister of Education. And, part of the information that I gave to him in regards to, we talked about several things, including the PSVs and the fact that they should not be allowed to be playing music while they're transporting children to school. And that culture has resurfaced. I've seen that happening while they're taking children to school. I've seen it happen when children are on their way home from school.
So when they get in those PSVs, they come into school in the wrong frame of mind. With the type of
Correct. So even on that level, they have to understand that they are also playing a role in this. We have cases where, it was happening when I was at school, but there's still too many cases where there's this, passing home and going into town coming back on the bus. You know, I have cases where, you know, serious cases of parents stopping these minivans and taking their sons and daughters off of it, you know, because of being told that, some family member or some friend spot the child, just jolly riding. And so these are things that increase cases where, these operators are being, taken before the court for issues with, female students. So, we had a broad-based system where we dealt with a lot of the elements. And I told them they have their legislation already against the PSVs, but I told them a law that is not enforced is not really a law. You already have a law there that says that they can't do it, but they shouldn't do it, but you don't enforce what is going on. And someone asked me how would you go about doing that? I said, well, listen, you already have enough marshals at the MTW. You can actually develop a case where you can probably bring some more individuals on, have them on dress and have them at strategic points on mornings. And if they get on a Zed or a minivan that's, playing music while they're transporting children, that minivan is off the road for a week. The bus driver's license is suspended for a week, or the conductor's license is suspended for a week. That vehicle is off the road for a week. If it is caught on the road during that week, if the driver is caught, operating other person's vehicle, or the conductor is caught doing it, then you go to a month. Then from a month to 6, to 6 months. And if it continues, then full, a complete, suspension, of complete cancellation of their permits. So there are things that need to be put in place, because all of these aspects must understand that they are playing a role. When, as a PSV operator, you're taking a child to school, you have to understand you're playing a role in that child's education. If you implement a system that interferes with the proper state of mind of that child on reaching school, then you have to, that is your fault. That child ends up at school or shows up at school without the right mindset. You're going to an educational institution, you're going to learn, but when you get there, your mind is warped by all of this vulgarity and all of this, all this bumping and grinding. So you're not entering the school at that moment, as a wholesome person. You're not going there to really learn. So all of these areas must understand you're playing a role in the development of our young people.